We're coming to you live from the Built Ford Tough Studio. Boomer Esiason and Greg Giannotti. It's Boomer and Gio on the Fan. Simulcast across the country on CBS Sports Network. And wherever you are on the free Odyssey app, good Friday morning. A feel-good football Friday, the last one of the NFL regular season this year. The 2023, now into 2024 NFL regular season ends. And we finally will be put out of our misery with the Jets and Giants. They've got games against teams that they never beat. And if you do beat them, it'll be nice because you never beat them. But if you don't, maybe you get a little bit of an advantage in draft positioning if it works out the way that the Giants at least want it to work out, because they could go all the way up to 2 if things break right for them. There are a lot of games that are of interest. The big Sunday night game between the Bills and the Dolphins, the biggest. So, and then after that, it's all over, and we get Super Wild Card Weekend, and the road to Vegas gets closer and closer and closer, and we will be out there. Good morning, Boomer. How are you?
Yeah, good morning, Jay. And don't forget, we have 2 games tomorrow.
That's right, Saturday games, of course.
2 games. You have Pittsburgh at Baltimore. Pittsburgh obviously playing
games
for
that
something.
matter, too.
Well, I mean, for Pittsburgh, they can get to 10 wins. That doesn't mean that they're in. They're not in a play-and-in situation, win-and-in situation. They need a little bit of help. And we all thought, and I still thought, that it was going to take 10 wins in the AFC. And, you know, the NFC 9 wins on the bottom, the wild card bottom of it, not the NFC South winner, which is the Bucs. If the Bucs win, they are in. But, yeah, so you have Pittsburgh and Baltimore, and then Pittsburgh will have to sit around and wait to see what happens on Sunday. And then, of course, you have Houston and Indianapolis on ABC as well, 8:15 tomorrow night. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, especially with this Miami and Buffalo deal, with Buffalo now being favored down in Miami because of all the injuries that the Miami Dolphins have suffered. And I think this is the big question as to whether Mike McDaniel can get his team ready to rock and roll and somehow win this football game and get the number 2 seed in the AFC.
Yeah, he got a lot of credit last year for hanging in there with Skylar Thompson in a playoff game. And then he came back this year with this crazy offense with all this speed, putting up 70 points, and everything was going really, really well. He's featured on Hard Knocks. I loved watching it. I couldn't get enough of Mike McDaniel, but you know, these are the moments that the great coaches separate themselves. When you lose a bunch of guys, you've got a win and win the division scenario on your hands. After last year, we didn't even win a game in December. He's got to figure it out. Now, I know that it's not all coaching and the players have to play. You understand that, but he cannot go into this game with this team and get his ass kicked like he did against Baltimore again, because then you get the fraud stuff coming out even more, because that's what they were talking about with them before they ended up beating. You even called the Dallas-Miami game the fraud bowl. So that stuff will be out there. I don't believe he is a fraud. I don't believe that team is a fraud. It's just that they've got so many injuries that it's very, very difficult to overcome, especially on defense.
But you got to look at who they've beaten. And look, you only beat who's on your schedule. And every game is tough, as we found out with Arizona beating Philadelphia last week. But I take a look at what Miami's got to go through right now. Sean McDermott saved Buffalo's season to the point where they're playing for the number 2 seed in the AFC. I mean, that's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Given the fact of where they were about 7 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, he fired nobody wants to fire coaches during the year. I can tell you that. It's not the easiest thing in the world to do, but he did. And ever since that firing took place, 2 things happened. 1, James Cook became much more of a presence. And 2, Steph Diggs became less of a presence. And more from Josh Allen and Gabe Davis and their tight end Kincaid. I mean, this has been a nice little bounce back kind of second half of the season for the Bills, and the Dolphins are going the other way. And I go back to that last 2 offensive series for the Titans in that game down in Miami, where Will Levis, of all people, led his team back to an improbable win in a situation that none of us who were watching that game would have ever thought, with 2 series left to go, that somehow the Titans were going to win this game.
Yeah, and you never want to say that a team stopped playing, but if you look back at that game, it just appeared like they thought it was over. They were up with 2 touchdowns with 4.5 minutes to go, with Will Levis and the Tennessee Titans, who had a miserable season up until that point, in their building, and it was sort of like they let the foot off the gas pedal. And then when it was too late, it was too late.
And then they have to go to Baltimore, and they beat the Dallas Cowboys, but then they have to go to Baltimore. and it's a reckoning. And I mean,
It's ugly.
a reckoning in so many different ways. It was a reckoning, a wake-up call maybe for them, but it was also a reckoning in a sense that maybe their defense has been completely wrecked now because their two best pass rushers are no longer available. One of their best cornerbacks is not available. A number of their linebackers are banged up and hurt. So they definitely have a lot of issues. And that's why I think the betting public believes, and I believe, that Buffalo's going to win. But then again, I'm thinking about this. It's like it's too obvious. There's something about this line that's telling me that it's just too obvious.
Well, also, and sometimes it's funny because the ones that feel like it's too obvious, you go the other way, and then sometimes it's too obvious, and it's a reason why it's too obvious because the game goes exactly the way you wanted it to. You never could really put your finger on it, but the Bills are one of those franchises, and I've told you this earlier this week, where if they came out and laid a massive egg in this game, you wouldn't be surprised. And it's not because of Sean McDermott or Josh Allen or James Cook or Steph Diggs or anybody that's currently on the team. It's just the whole aura of a franchise. When you get in games like this, it doesn't work out for you. Whether it's the Buffalo Bills, the Minnesota Vikings, the Cleveland Browns, the New York Jets, whatever it may be. Up until this point, the Detroit Lions, maybe they have another one of those things. But the Bills fan, and especially like the Bills and the Vikings similar, they get to a certain point and then they break your heart. But the Bills fan, I am sure, is scared to death of this football game. They might be excited. They are excited. They like the way their team is playing, but there is an anxiety attached to watching this game from a Bills fan base that I guarantee they're going to blow this. They're going to blow it.
It's like my team down 3-1 to Pittsburgh, and then we got to go to Pittsburgh, or we got to win the game at home, then we got to go win a game in Pittsburgh to get it back to Game 7.
Yeah.
And it happens. You got to believe in your team. I mean, 6 weeks ago, Maggie was dragging around here. She's the Bills fan around here.
Yeah.
Oh, my team stinks. This stinks. That. Everybody stinks. And now all of a sudden, here she is. It's week 18, and I'm just taking it from a Bills fan's perspective. I'm picking on Maggie. But now, like I told you the other day, I said, your team is fighting for the number 2 seed in the AFC. And you know what? You got a winning quarterback, and you got a winning coach. Those two things I do know. You can win with both of those guys. As long as they're on the same page, which they have been here now the last 6 weeks of the season, they're the team that has been surging. So would I be surprised if somehow Josh Allen got his team to the Super Bowl? I would not. I would not be surprised.
Yeah, me either. There's the two teams we talked about yesterday that could make that improbable run in the AFC would be the Cleveland Browns and the Buffalo Bills. Those would be the two teams. And maybe it won't be all that improbable for the Bills because they were a Super Bowl favorite for most of last year and brought back essentially the same team, but they had struggled mightily during the season. But, yeah, I would not be surprised at that either. And then those teams that you see getting hot at the end of the year and every single game feels like a playoff game, as long as they can get through that stuff healthy, it benefits them as they move on in the playoffs.
And I do think that there's a very good chance that in divisional weekend that we get Buffalo at Kansas City. Or Kansas City at Buffalo. It'd be Kansas City at Buffalo.
Well,
with 2 at 3, depending, because Baltimore's going to end up playing. I believe, if you look at this right now, Baltimore obviously has the bye. Right now, Miami is number 2, but if the Bills beat them this week, they go to number 2. And then you're talking about, come on, Cleveland can beat Jacksonville, and then Cleveland has to go to Baltimore. Because I don't think either Pittsburgh, Houston, or Indianapolis is going to be beating Kansas City or Buffalo, or Miami's not beating those teams either. Like you might have a. I'm trying to think. You could have a Miami at Buffalo situation.
Yeah, you could. I need to. This is a cop out. I mean, obviously, I feel better about the Bills than I do the Dolphins right now because the things worked out. But I can't. I can't say that the Dolphins can't go on a postseason run until I see how they play this week.
All right, okay.
But I have to see because I would not be. I would also.
They better win this week, and they better have a couple home games.
Right, exactly. And if they do that, then all of a sudden we're talking about a different situation.
Right now, as we are sitting here and we are talking about this, it would be if the playoffs were this weekend, it would be Miami hosting Indianapolis, Kansas City hosting Buffalo, and then it would be Jacksonville hosting Cleveland. I think it's going to be Cleveland and Jacksonville because Cleveland's locked in at the number 5 spot, and they're going to go play the AFC South winner. If Buffalo ends up winning and gets the number 2 seed, and you end up having, Indianapolis going to Buffalo. You have the Steelers maybe going to Buffalo, depending on which wild card team's going to. They're not going in there and beating them.
No, I would agree with that. And in that situation, you'd have Miami, Kansas City.
And then you would have Miami at Kansas City.
You get the Tyreek Hill situation that we missed out in Frankfurt.
Right.
To actually get in the playoffs.
That would be great. That would be a great story. And then, of course, you then have Cleveland. Now, Cleveland plays Jacksonville. Now, think divisional weekend. Think 1 week ahead now.
Yeah.
If you believe Cleveland's going to beat Jacksonville and they're the 5 seed, and neither one of them, maybe Miami can go in and beat Kansas City. Maybe that could happen.
Yeah.
And if that happens and they're a wild card team, because that's where they would be coming from to go to Kansas City, they would be the one ending up in Baltimore.
Yeah, they got to win this game to go on any sort of run. And they were, talking Super Bowl. I remember watching the scene where Dan Marino's giving the isotoner gloves to everybody. And then they were talking about having with the golf simulator, they were going to do like a league for the quarterback room. And Dan Marino goes, after the Super Bowl, we're going to do that. After the Super
somebody
Bowl.
touched the money.
But
somebody touched the money.
And that was before the Baltimore game.
Well, there you go. Somebody touched the money. So again, that's why this game on Sunday night is so important.
Yeah.
It is. I mean, that game is going to be for just the whole seeding aspect of the AFC.
Yeah, and I've been a huge Dolphins guy. I'm going to be rooting like hell for them just because they're more interesting to me. But I have a tough time believing the way that they looked against Baltimore that they are going to be at their best against Buffalo.
The reason I am selfishly rooting for Buffalo to win has nothing to do with I love the Dolphins. I think it's a great story. I love Mike McDaniel. I love the fact that Tua's a left-handed quarterback and he's playing great and all this other stuff. They're already in. They've made it to the playoffs. They have clinched a playoff berth. They just haven't figured out the seeding yet. I want Josh Allen in the playoffs.
Just to see what he could do if he could go on that run.
I want him in the playoffs because he's one of the best players in the league. And when he's playing the way that he's playing, he gives his team a chance to win every game. And I know there's so many other aspects to all these games. I understand that, but you want your best players in the playoffs, especially after there's 66 starting quarterbacks that have played or will have played this season. I want to see the starting quarterbacks that are making the big money make it to the playoffs.
And you want to have a really big playoffs and a great Super Bowl because, quite frankly, you know how much I love the NFL, but this has not been a good year for the NFL.
Because too many injuries. But right now
it has not been.
Lamar's going to start.
A lot of bad games.
Lamar will be in the playoffs. Most likely Tua will be in the playoffs. Patrick Mahomes will be in the playoffs. Trevor Lawrence is going to be in the playoffs. Joe Flacco's in the playoffs. And I'm hoping that it's going to be Josh Allen, and you got Gardner Minshew in Indianapolis.
Yeah, it was a fun watch. Right?
So you have two backup quarterbacks on the AFC side of things.
Yeah, but those two guys, like the Flacco story, which I cannot believe I'm saying after how much of a corpse he was here in New York, but the Flacco story is one that everybody's paying attention to, and it's a great story. And Gardner Minshew's always been fun, living out of a van and being crazy, and the way that he plays, like his ass is on fire. So I those are good. Those two backup quarterbacks I'm fine with, but. Yeah, this is whether it was the way that the Chiefs have played, to all the injuries, bad offense, and also we're getting a little bit skewed here with the Jets and the Giants and how bad they have been. But I feel like this was I can't think of great regular season games off the top of my head.
Philadelphia?
Yeah, I mean, it was okay.
It was okay?
It was okay.
Kansas City, Buffalo earlier in the season?
Yeah,
how about the Lions at Kansas City?
That was the first game of the season. That's a long time ago, man.
How
I
about
was
the
still
Cowboys
10
at the
when
Dolphins?
that game happened. Huh?
Cowboys at the Dolphins.
Yeah, it was okay.
Okay.
Yeah, it's okay. I don't know. You don't feel that this was kind of a
little
crappy regular season?
A little lackluster because of the injuries. Because, we don't have Joe Burrow.
That's right.
That sucks. I mean, I wanted to have the Bengals in the mix here. That would be great. We didn't have Anthony Richardson. We lost him early on in the season.
Aaron Rodgers
got hurt. Jesus.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy. And then when you think of on the other side of the thing in the NFC, what I want to see is the Rams at Detroit.
In the playoffs.
Somewhere along the line.
Stafford revenge spot.
Well, or Jared Goff revenge spot against his former team that he did take to the Super Bowl.
That's right, of course. Yes, you get both of those things.
How about, Jared Goff throws for 400 and 3 touchdowns, whatever. They beat the Rams, and he goes over to Sean McVay. You like that?
Yeah, oh man, that would be something. What would be it would be so heartbreaking for the Lions to have this season and then have Matthew Stafford knock them out in the first round.
It would be such a Lions thing, though. I mean,
torturous out.
For that franchise, yes. And that's why, maybe what we need to reflect this season is a Lion and Browns Super Bowl.
Oh, my God.
What would you think about that?
Yeah, that would be like the Cubs and the Indians back then in that 2016 World Series, right? That would be what that would be like. Because that was whatever team won was going to break a massive, massive drought.
The lovable losers.
Yeah. That would be it. And one of them is guaranteed to win a Super Bowl. That won't happen, especially in the NFC. The Lions are not going to get there. The Browns could be there. The Browns could absolutely be there. And that would be an amazing, amazing, fun story for Las Vegas.